Well, hello. I bring you greetings from the Middle East. I'm happy to be with you this morning. I'm honored to be among you. In fact, being with you this morning confirms a decision I made many years ago. I decided to leave the fishing business, and being here this morning confirms that was really a good decision, because I heard that you had breakfast this morning and you didn't even have fish. That kind of thing would send a guy like me out of business. So I'm glad I did that long ago. I left the fishing business, yes, I did. Well, I'm only a simple fisherman, and that's another reason I'm so honored to be among you very incredibly smart people this morning. I didn't have the kind of education that you folks have. Up until this morning, as I was prepping to come here and they told me what kind of folks I would be standing among, up to this morning, I thought that GED meant God eliminates demons. But they set me right on that one. As a matter of fact, I was thinking that an associate's degree was what me and my 11 friends got for walking around with Jesus as his associates for 3 years. And there was I feeling, yeah, we got our associate's degree in 3 years, only to find out that you get yours in 2. I'm only a simple, dumb fisherman. I don't know anything about Pythagoras' theorem, but I hear you guys know it and you can work it very well. I don't know what it is, but they told me how to pronounce it. I don't know anything about Newton's law. I know about God's law. And Einstein, what's that? Einstein's theory? Well, I don't know anything about that, but what I do know about is danger. I could talk about danger. As a fisherman, you eat, sleep, drink, wake up, danger. The fisherman's job is a difficult job. They told me that you have something called television, and that on that television there's a channel, whatever that is, called a History Channel or something, and you have some kind of program that looks at the most dangerous jobs in the world, and yeah, right up there among them is my job, fishing. Very dangerous. We could only do good fishing at night, and the nights are dangerous no matter how you count it. Danger. And we didn't have the kind of lighting that you guys have. The kind of lights that you have now. We went out in simple little dinghies we call boats at night, looking for fish. Danger. We didn't have anything called predictive weather, any kind of weathermen. The only weathermen around were me and my friends. We looked at the sky in the evening before, and we kind of figured that if it was red, it meant one thing. If it wasn't red, it meant another thing. But whatever caught us out there during the night, we just had to deal with it. We were simple people exposed to danger all the time. I mean, fishing is dangerous business. And don't talk about Leviathan, Loch Ness Monster, I hear you call it. That was on the front of our minds all the time. Fishing is dangerous business. I know danger. Not only that, but living in Galilee in my time, when some brutal and ruthless people called Romans ruled it, was living danger every minute of the day. It was dangerous business. I mean, those guys would walk around and just, you'd be in here worshiping, and you'd just find your doors being broken down, and in come Roman soldiers demanding taxes of us, even though we've paid it already, or even if we didn't owe any more. And they'd beat us. They killed some of my friends. I watched as some of my friends perished. It was dangerous. I know about danger. Living in Galilee, the Romans were one thing. We had a group of our own people called the Sanhedrin. Sometimes I thought it was actually better with the Romans than the Sanhedrin. I mean, they had a guy behind every tree, not only watching to see what law we broke, but what law it looked like we were going to break. It was just a dangerous life. Well, if you think that that was the sum total of danger, you haven't heard the whole story. One day we were by the River Jordan, and here comes a guy, a nice-looking guy, an interesting-looking guy. And the first thing that guy makes us do is resign the fishing business. He didn't force us to do it. Until today, I can't quite explain it. It just happened. There was something about this guy that made me and my friends just dump the fishing business. That was dangerous business because that was all I knew to do, to fish. I grew up watching my daddy fish. I grew up watching my uncles fish. I grew up in a fishing village. All I knew was to fish. And to resign the fishing business was dangerous because if I didn't know, the moment I gave up the boats and gave up the nets and gave up my friends to follow this guy was dangerous, I found out when I got home 6 days later. Oy vey, Peter! You left the what? What am I going to do? My mama told me about you and warned me not to marry. Oy vey, oy vey. Now you know what caused my mother-in-law's fever. Well, leaving the fishing business was dangerous business. Then, when we started following this guy, this guy was in an argument every single day of his life. Not that he started the arguments, mind you, but the same Sanhedrin I told you about, with all of their little foot soldiers all over the place watching to see what law we broke and what law it looked like we were thinking about breaking. Those guys met this man that we were following every day and started an argument every day. Dangerous arguments. Very dangerous arguments. And he would never back down. He would never, ever back down. He was always ready for them. And when you thought that he was going to give them a soft little word, man, the word he answered them with cut them to the quick. It was dangerous stuff following this man. Even though we left the fishing business, very often he would tell us, hey, I want to borrow your boat to go across the Sea of Galilee. Or I want to borrow your boat to go out a little bit so I could speak to the crowds out there. And it always seemed that this guy would choose only when there was going to be a hurricane to get into the boat. This was a dangerous fellow. We got into the boats when things were nice and dandy, and when we thought we were going to sail over to the other side with things being nice and dandy, we had another thought coming. This dangerous fellow would change up things. One time the man was actually sleeping in the boat while we were thinking we were going to die. Dangerous fellow. Very dangerous fellow. I know danger. As if that wasn't enough, he is the guy who said to us that we must, now listen, after me, good old Peter, gives up my boat and the fishing business and goes home and takes the blows that I took from my wife for doing it, this guy has the gall to say to us, if any man will follow after me, he must hate father, mother, wife. Give me a break, man. This guy was, yet even though he was so dangerous, there was something about him that kept us following. There was something safe about this guy, even though it was so dangerous. Well, I told you about the fights that he would get into with the Sanhedrin regularly. One time his answers were so hot and so disturbing that the crowd rushed on him. They were ready to kill him. I told you that he never backed down. Well, that time he didn't really back down, but he just disappeared from our midst. He just disappeared. disappeared. It's a good thing they didn't know me so well then, otherwise I couldn't disappear. Well, I would have disappeared a different kind of way, but let's not talk about that. And then, one time he speaks to the crowd, and he says, you think I look like a peaceful guy? Well, we knew that he was a peaceful guy, and we knew that he was also a dangerous guy, but he stood up to the crowd and he said, you think I am a peaceful fellow, eh? Well, listen up. I have come not to bring peace, but a sword. Dangerous fellow. Between mother and daughter. Dangerous, dangerous, dangerous fellow. And the epitome of the danger was this. After walking around with this guy for 3 years, and really believing that, yes, this was the man who was going to lick the Romans back to where they came from, and we were going to be a part of it, this guy starts talking violence. Violence. We'd have been happy if it was violence against the Romans. But the guy starts talking about violence from the Romans against him, and from the Sanhedrin against him. He began talking about a violent death, that he would die. Can you imagine that? And I got in some trouble for that just after I came up with a brilliant idea a few days before. He was asking us, well, what are the people saying about me? And we told him all sorts of things. Some of my friends came up with some pretty ridiculous answers, but that's what they said they heard the people saying. But he looked us straight in the eye and he asked, well, who do you say that I am? Well, honestly, sometimes I'm a little embarrassed to say it. I kind of put my foot in my mouth and I speak before I think, and that was one of those times I spoke before I thought. But surprisingly, what I said sounded good to him. It didn't make much sense to me, but when I declared, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God, he said, Peter, flesh and blood hasn't revealed this to you, but my Father has. Yet, a couple of days after that, this guy starts talking about violence against him. That he was going to die a ridiculously violent death. And so said, so done. A dangerous fellow. We tried hard to persuade him not to go up to Jerusalem. It was a bad time. We knew that the Sanhedrin were looking for every opportunity to cut him down. And we said, no, Lord, no, you can't do this now. I mean, you are the Messiah, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. You got to stick around to make it all happen. He said, look, my face is set like flint. Behold, we're going up to Jerusalem. I don't care what you say, we are going. And the Son of Man will be delivered to the chief priests and to the scribes. They'll mock him. They'll curse him. They'll spit on him. They'll kill him. And on the third day, he'll rise again. So, we couldn't stand in his way when he decided that he was going to go up to Jerusalem on the Passover. And into Jerusalem he went. And we watched as the people went crazy. And we were beginning to think, well, maybe we got it wrong. Maybe he got it wrong. Because all the people were shouting, Messiah, Messiah, Messiah. Blessed is the King of Israel who comes in the name of the Lord. And they went wild. They spread palm branches and they spread their cloaks on the ground as though it was the King of Israel. And we thought, well, maybe this was one time he didn't get it right. But by Tuesday evening, we knew that we were wrong and he was right. By Thursday evening, it got even worse. We had a meal with him. We've never heard the Passover meal done like that. He began talking about him being the blood, him being the lamb that was slain, him. And that this was the last time he was going to have it with us. We had it. We were just so tired. And so when he went out into the garden to pray, folks think we were just lazy and no good and worthless and sleepy, but it was just the weight of disillusionment. Believing that all this while he was going to lead not just us but Israel to victory and out of the clutches of those Romans, only to find that he had something else in mind. So they arrested him. I don't even want to talk about it, but it was one of my friends, friends, who had a lot to do with it. Too painful to remember now. What was even more painful was to watch this man who that day when we were in the boat thinking we were going to drown, that man who just came up and looked out and said, "Shut up. Settle down." And the hurricane stopped. That man who fed first 15,000, then another time 12,000 men, women, and children with one little boy's meal. That man who touched my mother-in-law and healed her of a fever. That man who raised Lazarus from the dead. That man who raised the son of a widow, a poor widow, in the village called Nain. That man who did all sorts of marvelous, incredible things. To watch that man stand up, speechless, powerless, looking, while they accused him, ridiculed him, knocked him upside the head. While they were prepping me to come here this morning, they told me about something you people call fight or flight. The man didn't fight, and the man didn't flight. He just stood there, did nothing. It was just too much for me. It was really dangerous. And then, to crown it all, the following day, they killed him. Brutal Roman death. Nailed him to the cross and dropped that thing in the hole. I heard about it because the women, his mother and the other Marys, told us about it. By then we'd had enough. We couldn't stay to watch that. It was dangerous as well as it was painful. But sure enough, a couple of days later, just as he said, "Oh, when will we get it?" Come to think of it, he said that to us one day. A couple of days later, while we were in retreat somewhere, that's my story and I'm sticking to it. We were in retreat somewhere, contemplating on all of these things, trying to make sense out of it. That's what responsible apostles do. The women came in, broke in on us and said, you got to hear this. What do we need to hear, woman? You got to hear this. He's alive. He's alive. He's alive. What? Well, you should see me and John compete to reach that tomb. I forget who won. But I tried hard. And sure enough, the tomb was empty. And there were the clothes that he was wrapped in, just as if he was still lying there, except his body wasn't there. And just when we thought that this was going to be exciting and wonderful, it hit us. This is just as dangerous as his life. His resurrection was dangerous too. Because no sooner than the word got out that he wasn't there, and that he was alive again, the Romans, those wretched Romans, they cooked up a fantastic story, you see, that laid the blame on us. I mean, that would be at least the first time it would be convenient to admit that we were hiding, that we weren't anywhere near the tomb. How could we roll the stone away? It was dangerous to be there when he was being accused. That's why I had to set a little girl straight and tell her, you must be mistaken. It's one of the other guys you saw with him. It wasn't me. Well, look, I got to come clean. It was dangerous. You have to understand that it was dangerous. And even his resurrection was dangerous. They put the blame on us. That's why we had to be hiding there where we were for up to 2 weeks afterwards. Because rumor had it that the Romans didn't like it one bit. They were gunning for us. Even his resurrection, as hopeful as it was dangerous business. I tell you, I know danger. I know danger, and the danger didn't stop at his resurrection. It continued way past his resurrection. I mean, the book that Dr. Luke, who wrote along with us, wrote, tells you the story. It tells you in Acts of the Apostles, it's called, that even though we, me and John and the others were filled with the Holy Spirit, and it was a different time then, it didn't stop the danger. It only made us ready to face it. It only made us appreciate what this danger was all about. But the danger didn't stop. Didn't stop at all. At the same time that we were finding favor with all the people, there was, on the other hand, disquiet in Israel. More disquiet among the Sanhedrin. So it was never an easy time. I mean, in the very beginning, me and John were going up to a temple one day, and we saw a man who wanted money, and we looked and, well, we don't have money, man, but what we have we can give you. Rise up, get up and walk. And he did. And the people wanted to worship us. No, it's not us. It's the master whom we served. And that caused one big riot in town. And the sum total of it is that we were beaten, we were jailed. That wasn't the first beating. That wasn't the first time we were jailed. But if you want to hear about real danger and real trouble, you gotta hear about my friend Paul. We had a couple of arguments along the way, but that's what friends and brothers are like. So I don't deny it. But Paul had it rough. I mean, this guy, first of all, when he came to know Jesus the way we did, the man started preaching as hard as I or any of the other apostles. And in the process of preaching, going about trying to preach the word, he encountered, guess what? Danger. Going on the highways and byways and through the back paths and all that. You don't know how many times that man fell into the hands of bandits. And you don't know how many times he stepped on poisonous snakes and was bitten by them. Never mind how much you read in that portion of scripture that somebody added after Mark wrote it, that you'll be able to handle serpents and you won't be bitten and all. Paul was bitten. He knew danger. So he was beaten as well. Beaten for preaching, just like we were. Time and time again, beaten. The man was hungry. I mean, he had nothing to call his own. He was naked. He was shipwrecked on his last journey before his final jailing. And don't talk about being slandered. He was slandered by the Gentiles. He was slandered by his own people. And he was both Jew and Gentile. Everywhere he turned, slander. Paul knew danger, just like we did. So even after the resurrection, there was danger. And I got to thinking about this thing called danger. And why they would want to send me to you this morning about that. And I think It has to do with this. You are joined at the hip with me and the other apostles. Don't you see it? And if you're joined at the hip with us in following Jesus, bet your bottom penny that you too are called to danger. Yeah. Your faith is dangerous. No matter how nice and comfortable and comforting and beautiful and all the other words you love to use about your faith is dangerous. And the sooner you know that, the better you'll be able to handle it, and the more faithfully you will live it in the world. What do you think it means that you're called to follow a Jesus who said, if you will follow me, you must take up your cross daily and follow me? It means that you're called to danger as a result of his resurrection. Now, I know that the reason that your faith can be dangerous in your time is precisely because there are some people who think that, well, who actually saw Jesus rise from the dead? You tell me to. Name one person who actually saw him rise from the dead. And they will sit there smugly looking as though, I got you now. I got you. You can't name one person, can you? Well, yeah, that's how your people in your time behave. And that can be a problem for you if you make it a problem, because you people have a certain approach to evidence that my people don't have. You people live in a time where all you want is evidence. When they were telling me about that thing called television, they showed me a little, what you call it, an advertisement of a little girl who said, we want more, we like it, so we want more. Well, it reminded me about your time and your people. You want more evidence. I don't believe it, so I want more evidence. Well, your approach to evidence is not the same as in my time. It doesn't matter that we saw him and we reported that to you and to the whole world. You want more evidence, okay? It doesn't matter that over 500 people saw him alive. And Paul recorded that in his second letter to the Corinthians. You want more evidence, yeah. And it doesn't help, that we saw him with our own actual eyes and touched him with our own fingers, and that the only way you could see him and feel him is through something called faith and through the Holy Spirit. And it doesn't help that the kind of miracles he used to do then, he doesn't do much of them nowadays. As a matter of fact, I told the guys when they were electing to send me to talk to you that I will row my best boat over here, and they laughed me to scorn. They said, Peter, you can't row to go over there. You got to get into something called an Airbus. And I call that a miracle. But what do I know? I'm just a fisherman. You mightn't call it a miracle. You're looking for evidence. Well, look, I have a suggestion for you. My suggestion is this: as you live in a faith that is supposed to be dangerous, number one, I think that you folks need to live with questions more than you live with answers. Because one of the problems of your time compared to mine is that your questions are so sophisticated. And your questions don't really seek to find out. Your questions seek to argue, and your questions seek to ridicule the other side, and your questions seek to elevate you to the right place. You're not really asking to know. So, my suggestion to you, and I believe that my master would support it, is that you learn to live with questions, either as much as you live with answers or more than you live with answers. That's just the way it is. For your faith, this dangerous faith, is really more about questions than answers. For we walk by faith, Paul wrote, not by sight. Sight is answers. Faith is questions. Learn to live with questions and learn to follow Jesus. For you see, in your time, you folks are over concerned about the empirical to the extent that you leave no room for the spiritual. You want proof, you want proof, you want proof, you want proof. But that leads me to the second thing I suggest to you. That not only should you learn to live with questions more than answers, I think you need to develop a new definition of evidence. And it is there in my friend's letter to the Hebrews where he wrote in chapter 11, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things you can't see, that don't even exist now but exist in the future. You need a new definition of evidence. That is what makes your faith dangerous, because you can't prove everything that you believe to the person who is overly concerned about the empirical. Because faith is not sight. Faith is what you trust on the inside because of the report of someone else trustworthy. And I mean, I told a few stories in my time, but you can depend on my report. It is based on the report of all the other apostles. And here's the third thing I suggest to you. That you learn to live with questions more than answers. You learn a new definition of evidence. But you also learn a new definition of danger. Because as they were prepping me again, they told me that the average American doesn't really know much about danger. They think that danger is being on a 6-lane highway. Because the average American hasn't been to Beirut or hasn't been to Afghanistan or hasn't even been to my country lately. The hot spots, not the tourist parts. So they told me that you probably have a different idea of danger than we do. Well, here's the definition. And remember, I'm only a simple fisherman, so as a matter of fact, let me not try to define it for you. You're smarter than me. Let me tell you this. Let me give you the clue about how you can come up with a new definition of danger. Just look at the danger man. The one I followed, Jesus. For if you view Jesus not as the simple Jesus, meek and mild, look upon this little child only, but you look upon him as the man of danger, the man of sorrows, the man who went face headlong into danger and invited you, come along with me, it is going to revise your definition of danger. And that's what you need to do this morning. That alone, my friends, that alone will take the power away from danger. That alone will take the fear away from death. That alone will make you resolute in the face of what looks dangerous. That alone will make you decide to run into what God calls you that looks dangerous rather than away from it. That alone will make you true Jesus followers, just like me, Peter, and my friends. I believe this Jesus that I tell you about. And I believe that you will be able to run in our footsteps. What is it that made us wake up and live with danger? It is the risen Christ. What is it that made us decide that running away from danger like we used to before his crucifixion and actually at his crucifixion? What is it that made us decide that we will plant our feet firmly in the ground and stay with him no matter how dangerous it is? It's the risen Christ. What is it that will make you be a true Jesus disciple in your world today? It is the risen Christ. Who is it that will change your life? It is the risen Christ. Who is it that will take away the fear of death, the fear of danger, the fear of the unknown, the fear of inconveniences? The living Christ, the risen Christ. Who is it that will change your life and change your family and change your nation and change your church? It is the risen Christ. I offer him to you today, for only he can do it for you.